is holding us back, fear and self-doubt. Ability will take you up there, character will keep you up there. The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. What would happen if you drove your car with the brakes on? You'd never go full speed because the brakes would offer resistance. Your car would overheat and break down. If it didn't break down, the resistance would strain the engine. To get to your destination, you would have to make one of two choices. You could either press the accelerator harder and risk damage, or release the brakes to make the car go faster. This analogy is a good parallel to life because many people go through life with our emotional brakes on. What are the brakes? They are the factors that prevent you from achieving fear, procrastination, success, lack of pride, etc. The way to release your emotional brakes is by building a positive attitude, realizing your self-worth and accepting responsibility. Failure. 20 reasons why we don't achieve excellence. Life is like a 10-speed bicycle. Most of us have gears we never use. There are 20 factors that can cause you to fail. By working to overcome these factors, you can release the brakes that are holding back your success. Unwillingness to take risks. Success involves taking calculated risks. Risk taking does not mean gambling foolishly and behaving irresponsibly. People sometimes mistake irresponsible and rash rash behavior as risk taking. They end up with negative results and blame it to on bad luck. Risk taking is relative. The concept of risk varies from person to person and can be a result of training to both a trained mountain climber and a novice. Mountain climbing is risky, but to the trained person, it is not irresponsible risk taking. Responsible risk taking is based on knowledge, training, and competence. Factors that give you the confidence and courage to act while facing fear. The person who never attempts anything risky makes no mistakes. However, not making the attempt is often a bigger mistake than making the attempt and failing. Once someone asked a farmer if he had planted wheat for the season. The farmer replied, "No, I was afraid it wouldn't rain." The man asked, "Did you plant corn?" The farmer said, "No, I was afraid that insects would eat the corn." Then the man asked, "What did you plant?" The farmer said, "Nothing. I played it safe." What is the moral of this story? Risk taking is part of life. Many times, not taking any risk could become the greatest risk. People who risk nothing, do nothing, have nothing, and become nothing. Indecision is habit forming and contagious. Many opportunities are lost because of indecision. Take risks, but don't gamble. Risk takers move ahead with their eyes open. Gamblers shoot in the dark. The following poem explains it well. Risks. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out for another is to risk involving them. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas, your dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, and is nothing. Lack of persistence. When problems seem insurmountable, Quitting may look like the easiest way out. It is true for every marriage, job, and relationship. Winners are struck but not destroyed. We have all had our setbacks in life, but failing does not mean we are failures. What is the difference between persistence and obstinacy? The difference is that persistence represents a strong will, and obstinacy represents a strong want. Most people fail not because they lack knowledge or talent, but because they quit. The total secret of success lies in two traits: persistence and resistance. Persist in what must be done and resist from what ought not to be done. A man is a hero not because he is braver than anyone else, but because he is brave for 10 minutes longer. Instant gratification, the desire to make a fortune overnight, has made the lottery a flourishing business. We are living in an age of instant gratification. There is a pill for everything, from waking you up to putting you to sleep. People want to take a pill to get rid of their problems. In the same way, when people want to be instant millionaires, they take shortcuts and compromise on their integrity. Remember, remember that when going for instant gratification, one never thinks of consequences, only of momentary pleasures. Today's generation defines the ideal diet as one that will take off 5 pounds for good intentions. These are people who don't want to work but want all the rewards. When you think short term, not long term, it is limited vision. With limited vision, you will never see any worthwhile goals. The problem with people today, the problem with people, the problem with people today is that they want instant answers. They are looking for 1 minute solutions to everything. Like instant coffee, they want instant happiness, but there are no quick fixes. This attitude leads to disappointment. Lack of priorities. Setting priorities is crucial to success. What good is to make millions of you lose your health? What good is what good is it to make millions if you lose your family? What good is it to make millions and lose your conscious? Is it worth it? Our priorities are based on our values. People make substitutions where they ought not to. For example, in relationships, they trade money and gifts for affection and time. Some people find it easier to buy things for their children and spouse to compensate for their absence than to spend time interacting with them. When we don't have our priorities right, we waste time. We waste time not realizing that time wasted is life wasted. Prioritizing requires discipline to do what needs to be done rather than taking actions based on our moods and fancies. These days, too much emphasis is placed on success and failure rather than doing one's best. How do you cope with defeat and problems? Your response to this question says a lot about your character. One of the keys to solving this mystery of success is understanding your priorities. Some people set their sight on money, power, fame, or possessions. We have to understand our priorities. Success does not come by reading or memorizing the principles that lead to success, but by understanding and applying them. Prioritizing is one of the principles of success. Looking for shortcuts. If you become a neurosurgeon by taking a weekend course, guess what would be the result? The result would be a disaster. The easier way may actually be the tougher way. Once there was a lark singing in the forest. A farmer came by with a box full of worms. The lark stopped him and asked, "What do you have in the box and where are you going?" The farmer replied that he had worms and that he was going to the market to trade them for some feathers. The lark said, "I have many feathers. I will pluck one and give it to you, and that will save me looking for worms." The farmer gave the worms to the lark, and the lark plucked a feather and gave it in return. The next day, the same thing happened, and the day after, and on until a day came that the lark had no more feathers. Now it could no longer fly to go hunting for worms. It started looking ugly and stopped singing, and very soon it died. The above story exemplifies the behavior of losers who, for their short term gain, eventually suffer long term pain. For their short term gain, eventually suffer long term pain. The moral of this story is quite clear. What the lark thought was an easy way to get food turned out to be the tougher way. There are no shortcuts in life. Isn't the same thing true in our lives? Many times we look for the easier way, which really ends up the tougher way. The key is to get to the root of the problem and not just go with shortcuts. The same is true of our attitudes in life. Some people spread their attitudes of bitterness and resentment, and these attitudes keep cropping up in different parts of their lives. Selfishness and greed. Individuals and organizations that have a selfish attitude have no right to expect growth. The attitude is to keep putting themselves first without regard for the welfare of others. Greed always wants more. Needs can be satisfied, but greed cannot. Greed is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you get. It is a cancer of the soul that destroys relationships. Greed comes out of low self esteem, which manifests itself as false pride, pretense, or keeping up with the John sense. The way out of greed is to learn to live within your means and be satisfied. Being content, however, does not mean a lack of ambition. Where does it end? A wealthy farmer was once offered all the land he could work on in a day, provided he returned by sundown to the sorry. A wealthy farmer was once offered all the land he could walk on in a day, provided he returned by sundown to the point at which he started. To get a head start, early the next morning, the farmer started covering ground quickly because he wanted to get as much land as he could. Even though he was tired, he kept going all afternoon because he didn't want to lose his once in a lifetime opportunity to gain more gold. Late in the afternoon, he remembered that the condition he had to fulfill to get the land was to get back to the starting point by sundown. His greed had gotten him from the starting point. He started his return journey, keeping an eye on how close he was to sundown. The closer it got to sundown, the faster he ran. He was exhausted and out of breath, and he pushed himself beyond the point of endurance. He collapsed upon reaching the starting point and died. He did make it before sundown. He was buried, and all the land he needed was a small plot. There is a lot of truth in this story and a lesson to be learned. Whether the farmer was wealthy or not, any greedy person would have ended the same way. Lack of conviction. People who lack conviction take the middle of the road, and guess what happens to those in the middle of the road? They get run over. People without conviction do not take a stand. They go along to get along because they lack confidence and courage. They conform in order to get accepted even when they know that what the group is doing is wrong. They still go along to get along. Some people consider themselves a shade better because they do not support the wrong. However, they lack the conviction to oppose. They remain silent and they think they have integrity. Silence and integrity are two different things. Just because a person is silent does not mean he has integrity. In fact, more lies in history have been told by remaining silent when we should have spoken. By not opposing something we know is wrong, we are actually supporting it. One of the important secrets to success is instead of being against something, be for something. That way, we don't become part of the problem but part of the solution. It takes conviction to take a stand. Conviction takes faith. Faith without action is delusion. Faith does not wait for miracles but produces them. क्या है? We all have low moments. We all have fall down and get hurt. We all have moments when we doubt ourselves and indulge in self-pity. The point is to overcome these feelings and restore your faith. There are three kinds of people in this world: people who make things happen, people who watch things happen, people who wonder what happened. Which category do you fall into? Unwillingness to plan. It is unfortunate but true that most people spend more time planning a party or vacation than planning their lives. Experience shows that one properly planned minute saves four in execution. Achievers who want to ensure success plan carefully. They even plan for the unplanned. If you have not planned for the unplanned, that means you have not planned properly. A good general or executive will always have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. Why? Are they planning to fail? Absolutely not. They are planning to succeed regardless of the obstacles. If plan A fails, plan B picks up and so on. Unwillingness to progress. Preparation. Confidence comes from preparation, which is nothing but planning